what he's experiencing is grief?
That's quite a question. Can a man express grief, or can a man experience grief without crying? Yes, it is very possible. And there are very many interesting ways in which we sadly grieve without even noticing that we're grieving. One of them is that we just simply exclude ourselves from the rest of the world, and in doing that, we not exclude ourselves. And in secluding ourselves, we imagine that we are alone on this journey. So we do not give ourselves a chance to express what we are going through. The other thing, of course, that some people go through that is really disturbing is how they struggle to either eat or even sleep. And then they have a kind of way in which they just simply change their attitude towards so many things. So if someone has been lively, all of a sudden they just seem to pull back. All of a sudden they're not doing all the things that they've been doing. And in so doing, they just become a totally new human being. And the trouble with that is that sometimes they do not realize that it is not a very good place to be in. So what I've seen people do, and I know that I've been through this myself, is that either we push things so that we let go of the ugly feeling of grief and the emotional turmoil that is going on in our lives, or we end up doing things that originally we would not do. And what we are doing in that is we are trying to cover up the space that we feel a void and emptiness in. And as we do that, sadly, we fail to realize that we are slowly sinking because we think we are in control. Now, the problem with grieving people is that because they do not understand what they are going through, they all of a sudden feel that there's this rush of energy that comes in. So I find myself probably doing a lot more work. I find myself trying to justify a lot of things that earlier on I would not justify. I find myself just deciding that there must be something that takes away all the pain and the loss that I'm having to experience and the grieving experience that goes with it. And so sometimes we don't cry. Sometimes it's our actions. Sometimes it's going to be our words and how we get into this defense mechanism. But, you know, we had this thing when I was doing psychology where we were told you get angry at work and then you come home, and because you cannot beat your wife or children, you kick the cat. And we sometimes do that. So we struggle with having to process it. And also because we are not willing to talk about the pain that we are going through, we decide to keep it in ourselves and find something that can ably replace whatever we are going through. So yes, it is very possible for us to go through grief, but for some reason, we can also decide that we will not break down, we will not talk to anyone, we will just simply shut our lives and get either onto binging onto things that we originally never used to do, or we simply seclude ourselves and choose to live a life which we think is peace, but because we do not want anyone then to get into our space to tell us about our pain, we decide, okay, I'm going to lock everyone out and I will live on with my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. That's really interesting. And we may have people, from what you say, I hear that you may have people who carry significant losses without them or even anyone around them recognizing that they're grieving. And then you also talked about emotional suppression, where we tend to maybe keep whatever we are dealing with inside us or even let it out in the wrong way. This brings me to Roscoe. We have seen in most instances where society tells boys and men to be strong. Like, what messages are men receiving about how they are supposed to grieve, and when can being strong become emotional suppression?
First of all, thank you very much. I'm pleased to be part of this conversation. When we speak about men and grief, most times, we often begin by saying that men do not express their emotions. And when you do, you're not strong enough. I've come to believe that this is only partly true because we all know that men grieve. But sometimes grief disguises itself as work, as responsibility, as silence, as anger, sometimes isolation, movement, all the needs to remain strong for everyone else. In my own family, after so many losses, and I'll just talk about um, a certain relative of mine, let me not mention names for privacy. I remember my relative who made calls, posted messages, notified relatives, accompanied anyone who had, an errand to run. He was willing to do whatever. He appeared to be coping because he was helping. But at the time when they were carrying a casket or the coffin to be taken to the grave, he collapsed. We had mistaken his movement for coping. Some people respond differently. Most men take responsibility when everything, falls apart. And I remember that even me, some responsibilities fell on me. You have to arrange things, you have to organize things, you have to, take care of people. I learned how to organize, make decisions, care for others, and keep functioning. But functioning is not the same as healing or the absence of grief. Sometimes responsibility is an expression of love. Sometimes it's also where a man hides his grief. So that is why, for me, this conversation matters. Men, how they process grief. But to me, the question is not simply why don't men grieve or are they strong? Do men grieve? We must ask, how does a particular man grieve? Where has his grief gone? What is he carrying silently? And does he have a place where he's not required to be a strong one? For me, healing is not meant like it doesn't. Healing has not meant like leaving the people I loved behind or pretending that I have moved on. I've completed the grief process, the grieving process. It has meant learning to participate in the life that remains while carrying, the memories, the love, the stories, and their influence with me. So you have to learn how to act alive. The grief remains somewhere, a part of you, almost forever. It will be interesting to hear, but I don't know who's able to be strong through the losses. It's just impossible. But everyone is different, everyone copes different, and I'm glad that we are having this conversation, and I'm keenly waiting to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roscoe. So what stands out from that is that grief does not look the way we expect it to look. Sometimes you can see what we see on the outside may even be very different from what's happening internally, based on the example you gave us. So I would like to bring that into a very common experience that we are all very conversant with. That's relationships. It could be marriage, it could be friendships, any kind of relationship you have. So Henry, uh, most times, like when a marriage or significant relationship ends, what does a man lose beyond the relationship itself?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And I think many people thought that as my earlier the earlier speakers have mentioned, many people in some way would think, okay, it could even be that actually the man wanted the relationship to end. But even when first of all, I want to start on that note. Even when people say we are, let's say, tired of the relationship, in some way, it doesn't mean that they will not have any pains as a result of its ending. They will certainly have moments. It could actually be bitterness, looking at how tough and that anger probably that they could be inhibiting could be actually what is going to make things worse. So what I want to start on that note. So it could be either it was positive, it was a good relationship, but it could also be that it was not so beautiful, but it has ended anyway. It doesn't mean that they are going to jubilate at the end of the day. There are still things that they are going to look up to, and they will say, oh my God, this either it was so bad, and I really, yes, it was so bad, I still feel the hurt. But also they would have moments when they feel like, oh my God, what about this? I really miss this. At one point, when something has completely gone out of our way, it also gives people chance to go back deep into themselves. And that will be the time to say, oh, I misbehaved in such and such a way. I did this and this. And somehow what that might mean is probably they may get into blaming themselves. They may get angry with themselves, or they may even get more angry with the other people, or other people who are not probably part of the relationship, but kind of we are related to the relationship. It could be the relatives, it could be other people, friends and other people, or the circumstances around it. So when there is a relationship, there is a connection, like just like the umbilical cord, it connects a baby to a child. I want to bring that that example. When it's cut, the kid cries a lot, and the reason this kid is crying is because they have been cut off from the supply of food and comfort. Now, even here, it's like somebody is completely cut off from the other person, because when people are relating, they are kind of knit together. And now that has ended, they are going to end up in bigger trouble, and it does affect them in a significant way. So relationships are very important for our own well-being. Actually, they have made a study recently that shows that even actually our longevity depends a great deal on the quality of relationship we have, where statistics now show that 50% of the longevity is not actually genetics as we used to think. It's 55% is about the quality of relationships we have. And actually, genetics only carries 5%. The rest are lifestyle and the medication we receive and the support we receive. But 55 is the quality of relationship. So that tells you how difficult it could be if somebody is cut off from a relationship that they badly desire. And quite often, what men will tell, what people will say, is that your man gets strong. Say, it could be, say, a relationship has ended. Say, your partner has ended, has died, or it could be that the relationship has gone bad. In your case, we are talking about a relationship that has gone bad. They'll tell you, there are so many other guys would come and quickly probably tell you, there are so many other women, you'll get another one. But that doesn't heal you in any way. And quite often, actually, what many people turn to is to run and probably look for other people, not knowing actually that they're getting into more problems because they haven't healed. As I said, the connection, it's like you've cut the umbilical cord and it needs healing. And that's why they apply some saline to make sure that it doesn't even rot and that it dries very fast. So what is important in even in a relationship, it's important to know when it has completely, when a relationship say has ended, that you don't take it as a mean, as a small thing. It's very important for you, and it can actually tantamount to more problems in future relationships one may engage in. So it's very important that at this level that one actually gets into it. It could be probably a learning lesson that yes, as you go through the grief, you're also learning both positive and negative things out of this. What do you need to pick out of this? What didn't you do? What happened? But also you need probably to cope at that level, and you need support. Even if it means crying for a man, it's okay to cry in that case, because it doesn't mean that men, one guy one time comes to the for a session and he says, I'm going to kill myself. Other people may not think actually that men can also die by suicide because of an end of a relationship, but it does happen quite often. And they are as equally affected when actually these days, actually, they are more affected than probably even women would be, because women would have a lot of other groups to support them. But boys, quite often, when a relationship ends, people just laugh off it and they think that you'll go out. And more, it's not only a culture of us here in the African context, but even in other contexts. Men, just like women, are as affected when a relationship goes bad. Probably sometimes are more affected. And they should be supported. They don't need to just look on, or people just don't have to look on when a relationship has gone bad. And they should be supported, but also they should go out and seek support. They should cry about it. They should seek all the support available. Yeah. I don't know whether I'm answering well your question.
Yeah. You've done a good job answering it. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Roscoe, what else might a man actually be grieving in that situation?
By appreciating Henry for his submissions, so important. One thing that I want to touch that most people often underlook or sometimes just ignore is the issue of identity. From a cultural point of view, we know what happened to a mother or father who loses a wife, when children lose their parents. For me, what I would like to say is that every loss should not be treated as a separate incident. Because now I want to talk about cumulative grief. Cumulative grief can easily change identity. After some time, you start asking yourself, who am I? Because the more people you lose, they alter not only your place in the family, but even the understanding of yourself, your understanding of your own self. For people who have lost a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, a wife, you get to a place where grief raises a question. The question of who am I now that the people who knew earlier versions of me are no longer here? The people that I used to wake up so early to protect, they're no longer here. Why do I have to do all this? This is particularly significant for men whose identities are closely connected to being sons, brothers, fathers, protectors, family decision makers. You change without even realizing it. The way you approach things changes. So for me, what I would say that is something that I actually realized in myself is grief changed my identity. The losses changed the way I looked at myself, my role, my purpose for life, what makes me wake up. And I'm hoping that there's so many people who are just like me. And what I want to say to you is that it's only natural, because relationships cannot be forged. You don't get to replace your mother. You don't get to replace your sister. You don't get to replace your loved one. That's why it's extremely painful, but you have to learn to live again. You have to learn to define who you are in the process of changing while you grieve. And it can be difficult for some people. And as Henry said, sometimes seeking, professional help or speaking to other people can help you reposition yourself to understand how you want to move after the losses. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roscoe. And that was a really good submission. And you made a very important point, like where you say loss can be there, but we need to learn to live again. And yeah, that's really important. And thank you so much. So I would like to move to Isaac. Isaac, what are some forms of loss immediately recognized as grief, while others, I would mention some, job loss, business failure, loss of your status, or even unfulfilled aspirations are not?
Thanks, Derek. um, I think we've in answering your question, I think what we've done as human beings is, and I think I had Henry say something about this. I think when we think of loss, one of the very first things we think about is death. And sometimes we don't realize that death might actually be the ultimate loss that every one of us has to go through at some point. And so we never understand that, even like you said, the loss of aspirations, or the loss of a job, or even the loss of a home, or because we I think we've learned to attach a lot of meaning to the reality of people being there and being alive. And so we do not understand that each one of these little details has a very big part to play in the way we live our lives. So I'll be a bit personal about this, because for some reason, when my father died, I wasn't as affected as I was when my mother died. The irony about it is that when I hit my 20s, all of a sudden, I realized that I had actually lost my father, and that I had to deal with the reality that he was dead. And maybe the reason was that I, at the time he died, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And this is probably what Roscoe was also talking about. Who are we in the light of loss? I didn't understand it a lot about, well, this guy has been in my life for only 12 years, and probably there is nothing big about it. And yet, the older that I grew and realized that I was becoming a man, something all of a sudden hit, and I realized, hold on, Isaac, where is your father? You see that? Yes, I knew he was gone. But the funny thing is that at that point, I was asking the question, by the way, where is your father? And it's something that came from me also getting to understand myself. And this is something that Roscoe has talked about. So we do not think carefully and a lot about certain things as being lost, because maybe sometimes we have not attached as much importance as we should to those things. We imagine that if I lose a job, I will get something else. If I lose money, well, I'll go and make more money. If I lose this and this and the other, well, there is a chance for me to do it again. Compared to if you lose a spouse, or if you lose a child, or if you lose a father or mother, you know that these people are irreplaceable. And even when you get people that can take their place in your life, you still know that, well, these people might be in my life, but they are not those very people. And yet, when we get money, when we've lost it, or we get a new job because we lost an older one, we know that, well, this was possible. We knew that we would get to this point. So we don't attach a lot of importance to these things. The sad bit about them is that each of these losses affects us in a certain way. And I think, like Ross said, we need to understand how each one of these things then at, it affects us. And that affecting is important, because if we cannot process the whole idea of what has this done to me, how has this affected me, what changes am I seeing in myself as a person? Can I discover myself by talking to someone to say, hey, I've been out of work for such and such a time. And I wonder if you see there is a difference in me, in the way I treat you, in the way I do this and the other. But also sometimes it goes back to our self-analysis, and asking ourselves the question, where was I before this happened, and where am I right now? Am I still in the same mental frame as I was at the time, or has something snapped that I need to seek help about? And I think the moment we realize that we are holistic beings, that everything about us affects us, is the moment we realize that every little thing that we do not achieve, and every little loss that we get, has a profound effect on us. Because in the long run, whether we like it or not, there is going to be something. But because we see ourselves in silos, we assume that there is this human relationship beat, there is this work beat, there is this personal aspirations beat. And so we assume that none of these things affects the others. We will not understand how important it is for us to even process the loss and the grief that we go through when some of these losses happen. And I know that That is a thing I personally struggle with. But like I said last time, it is one of those things that I will willingly go to talk to someone about and say, hey, I don't understand this about myself. And of course, it comes back to this one person to say, by the way, Isaac, maybe we want to think about this and this and this from this point of view. Or maybe there are these questions that we need to ask. And the more the questions come, the more you realize that there is no such a thing like a small loss. Every loss has a profound effect on us, and we just simply need to know how to deal with it. How we deal with it is still a matter of personal decision. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And you have highlighted what I pick from what you've highlighted is that oftentimes loss is layered, and just losing a relationship it may not even just be a relationship, it may not be a job, but most times we tend to forget that we are losing maybe connections with our families, we are losing routines, and then even identity, just like Roscoe mentioned, and maybe even the hope or even the future that we had imagined. So it's really important to put all this into perspective. So building onto this conversation, I would like to bring in Ross. Ross, uh, it's a build up to this specific conversation we're having. Can losing a job, business, maybe income, your health, or even professional standing produce genuine grief, particularly when a man's identity is closely tied to being a provider?
I'm going to be very careful here
Mm.
because people have often sort of like found a way to, I don't even know how to say this without being insensitive. People have found a way to sort of like insinuate that other things, some people talk about paid, some people talk about losing jobs, but I want to say, especially as a clinician, that human life, or sometimes life of a pet, and things like loss of a job or a house, things that you can just wake up and replace in ways that could even exceed the previous one. Because, like you said, can also losing like a job be considered, grieving? But we all know that people lose jobs and then get better ones, and they're happier. But no one loses a child and forgets the earlier child because they have another one, or because they've remarried, they forget their spouse or their partner that is deceased. So we have to be very careful. And I don't want to downplay um, the importance, or the extent of the pain that comes with these other things that we accumulate in life. It is tremendous loss as well, but you cannot compare it to grief. Because if someone talks about losing their parent that they've seen all their lives and they've fought hard to keep alive, and they lost the battle to whatever happened, that comes wrapped up in so much that cannot easily be replaced, compared to losing a job, compared to losing a business, compared to. So I can understand why sometimes people will lose things and they say, oh, I'm grieving this relationship and all that. But if you and your partner separate and you know that they are alive and they're well, with an opportunity that you can actually make up and, stay together again, it's very different from going through listening and hearing the news that someone is dead, having to see their body being lowered, and waking up knowing that you'll never see them again. It's very different, and you can't replace them. It's extremely different, and sometimes people see it as traumatic. And if I go back to men, that's why I say that when it comes to men, um, men may not become vulnerable merely because society instructs them to open up about these losses, I want to talk about the vulnerability, because everyone thinks that men should not show any emotions, men should not do this. And I'm trying to see how I can align this to these other losses. Men talk about losing jobs, men talk about losing businesses, men will talk about all these other things, but then they go quiet. They don't go quiet entirely because they can't express their grief. This is about, who can I trust? Who is safe enough for me to be vulnerable and talk about this loss? Okay? Vulnerability usually emerges in relationships where it feels safe to be hard. When someone is able to say, you know what? I've never, one of my very good colleagues was able to say, I've never talked about my mom's death. Not to anyone, but for some reason, you've made me think about them. And now I want to talk about my relationship with my mom. It's about us looking at vulnerability as relational. If you haven't provided safe space for someone to be vulnerable enough to open up about how they feel, to even express this grief, they're never going to. So for me, to get back to the point and conclude, I would never downplay loss of a job or things when someone else, be it man or woman, expresses it. But I know from experience that even if I would lose everything that I have to bring back my loved ones, because as long as I'm alive, I can work again and build. But knowing that whatever I do, I cannot bring back my loved ones, whatever achievements, it's so painful to know that they'll never be there to clap, maybe in spirit. They'll never be able to hug me again. That's sort of like the difference. That's sort of like the vast difference that I attach to this. And I'm like, things you can lose, this you can lose, but you can't compare that to human life. Over to you.
Thank you, Rose. You've raised something quite significant here, and it's really important for us to understand, just like you mentioned, we need to create spaces like for people to be able to grieve, to be able to relate, because you say vulnerability is relational. It's very hard for you to relate with someone and share whatever you're going through if you have not created that space for you to do that. So I would like to bring in Henry uh, in this same space and in this same angle and discussion we're having. How can we create a space for men to grieve without allowing that pain to become an excuse for harmful behavior towards maybe people they are related to, close friends, partners, children, and others?
Yeah, I thank you very much, Derek, and I'm happy you are asking this question, and especially now that our signature is men, and I think men generally have not been given that space. I think one thing that we have always told ourselves is to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. We say it in church and probably in the mosques and everywhere, but it's rarely fully done. I know of one of my friends who had some challenges. I actually knew he was going through trouble, but we find it difficult many times even to bring the conversation. Quite often, I've heard also people say, I am going to avoid that person because I don't know how to behave in front of him or her because they love somebody so dear. So what do I say? Oh, they love something so important to them. Or say, I want really to widen it to all the aspects that you've been talking about. Somebody loses a job. I can tell you for a fact, one time I was moving one direction, then all of a sudden it was like, it shut. And then I changed direction of my career trajectory. And what happened is some of the people I really treasured, I remember going to one place and I saw the person was in that building because I was looking at the whatever. Then I called and then the person said, I'm not there. And I was feeling like, oh my God, they even don't want anymore to see me because I got this problem. So that's what came to me. I feel like I was being pushed aside by everyone who knew the condition I was going through. So it happens actually that we quickly say our brothers, but I think what, especially those of us seated in here, one of the things we must tell ourselves is, yeah, not everyone, it's just important that we are available to our friends. Just like uh, if one would go biblical, the story of Martha and Mary, what Mary did was to get close to Jesus and be very close to her. And Martha thought I would best probably go and get food and make sure. She wasn't also doing a wrong thing. Actually, when it comes to supporting people who are grieving, it's very important that we look at both. Any other way of support, they may not actually be one interested in us talking to them, but they may still be very much interested in our being present. I think us being present to other people, it's one of the greatest things that we can give to people. If they are willing to talk to us, well and good, but also it's good to always ask people, what do you think I can do for you? It may not be that they're interested in talking to us. They may actually be interested in us giving them a hand or picking their children, say in case it was the wife who was picking children and they know we are close enough, or keeping their children in our homes. Something as good as that. So we need to always, first of all, be empathic. I think that's one thing that we shouldn't just be talking about, but we should, especially if somebody has had a loss, let's get to our feet and say, what can we do? What do you think? How helpful can I be to you? I think that's going to be very important to start with. But also, give them our ear and give them time and give them whatever we can. Every one of us has something to give. At one point, I've told people that I think I love village people more than us who are urbanites and stay in town. I think we are more aloof, well, when it comes to we seem sometimes close to each other, but we're not close enough. People in the village, they would come and be around you. But I've been at funerals in urban centers. Our colleagues will be going for, they have travels tomorrow, they have meetings tomorrow, they have ABCD. So when they so that night, and probably they may not call you back. That might be it. We buried his whatever, and so give a hand. Call someone whom you think could be going whatever. Today, someone called me. He doesn't have, this person doesn't have a job. We worked together close to 20 years ago, and they said, I don't have a job. Now, my response was, we had actually had a lot of chat and talked about many other things. So me knowing, for instance, I didn't know this person didn't have a job, but it would have been a good thing if I got to know, to call this person and say, oh, they told me something is going wrong. How, I mean, you don't have a job. How can we help? Just even talking to them, sorry about that. I learned of it. But many times we run away from our people. So what I want to say to all of us seated in here is that when people have trouble, even if we don't have the money, but it's okay to talk to people. People feel very much overwhelmed when they're not called. I can tell you, genuinely. So it's very important that we reach out to people, especially when they are at their lowest. That's when they need us most. And that's when we can create the space. That's when people can open up. People can't open up when you're not showing up. People are always kind of scared of opening up more, especially when they don't see you as somebody who is willing, who is having open hands to receive them. So I want us to always inculcate that as part of our life, so that especially as men, women are very have a better chance in our traditional cultures. Most of the African cultures, when a woman lost a husband, They were free to go and pick food from anywhere. But when a man lost a wife, a man didn't have the same benefit. Yet he also needed the support of some sort to take care of the children, to probably even also get the food. Probably wasn't having the energy to dig, and then he needed more support. But let's be present to our fellow men, especially to the men around there whom we think or who we come to realize that they're going through some not very good experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. And you mentioned the importance of being open to listen to others, and also being able to give a hand and maybe a listening ear to others. So, moving on, Isaac, I would like us to talk about our culture. And traditionally, African communities had extended families, elders. We had community spaces where people could process difficult experiences like death, loss. What happens when these communal ways of grieving become weaker?
Um, what happens when these communal spaces become weaker? I am not so sure if these communal spaces have become weaker. I think what's happened is that they've actually evolved. But I also think, and I think you really say it, I think we've become a very nuclear type of family setup that is now about the spouses and their children. And in the long run, we don't extend our tentacles to the wider community that we could have really gotten support from. And so for me, there is always that problem because if we do not realize that we are part of a larger community, and this community really is interested in the well-being and the welfare of our lives, we slowly lose what we really need to do as human beings. Now, regarding community spaces, I know that something has happened to me when I've gotten into spaces of loss. Um, and I think what has happened is that people people get to me to say, sorry about this, this has happened. And then the trouble I think that is happening in today's world is we've become too capitalistic that we, to the point that we just, once the loss is done, we've gone with, we've condoled with people, or we've shared our personal experiences with them, we leave them on their own, and we never do any kind of follow-up to find out how they're doing and stuff like that. Leaving that aside, I think what has happened in the world, and what really is happening today, is the fact that we have become so self-centered, and the communal spaces that we really would have been a part of are centers that we have then decided to put at the periphery. And this, the trouble with that peripheralization of community is that then we seem to stand on our own, to imagine that we can do things with our own strength, in our own abilities and stuff like that. Now, when cultures break apart, what happens is that the human being breaks apart, because if the most basic part of a community is the family, and families are having issues already with lots of losses, say things like divorce or even death in a family, or something goes wrong with a relationship in a family, and you have to just simply get someone as an outcast. Because of the breakdown of these families, our communities have forgotten the need to really understand that what goes on in my life really is important for another person who is part of my life, who is part of the kind of communities and societies that I live with and work with. And so in the long run, because we have become too nuclear minded, we no longer think of ourselves as part of a wider community. But also, I think what is happening lately is that because we are too busy to even understand what's going on in another person's life. I'm going to use a very funny example. It's one of those examples that have amazed me about our communities. I don't know if anyone on the group is aware of how the people of Bosoga greet. They will start with you as a human being. They will move into the well-being of your family. They will then move into the well-being of your community, and then they'll come back to you, And what they are really doing is to see if you and the community and your well-being as different parts of this community, if you are all connected. So if something is not fine with me as the husband in the home, how is it affecting my family, but also how is it affecting my extended family, and how is it affecting my community? So what's happening? If we're a communal society, how are we able to navigate what's been happening? Unfortunately, that does not exist a lot lately, because we think of ourselves as individuals who imagine that we can do things on our own. But maybe what I need to say here is, and I think both Henry and Ross have talked about it, is that we have found evolving ways in which we can share our experiences. And so I can walk into someone's study and say, hey, can we talk? Can we just have a chat about this? I just feel like this and this and the other, and I don't know how to deal with it. Or we also ask ourselves the question, who within our families are we able to relate with? And again, like someone said, these things are relational. Vulnerability is relational. Who even within our communities and families can we talk to, so that it goes beyond us having to be more open with the community and the larger group of our people, but we have those specific people within our communities, within our spaces that we can talk to. And what that then helps us with is that we are able to realize that we are not alone. So what happens generally when these community spaces break down is that as human beings, something about us snaps. But also, I think one of the things we are learning to do in order to deal with these breakdowns of communities is to find people that we can be vulnerable to, people that we can talk to, and people that we can, even within our own family spaces and community spaces, we know that I can trust so and so. I can tell them all the crap I'm going through. I can tell them about this loss and how it's affecting me, and tell them, really, this is how I feel. I have this question I always ask my friends, how are you? And the famous answer is always, I am fine. And I always have this famous question I ask once they tell me they're fine. Are you fine as in fine? Are you fine because that's the answer? Or are you really, really fine? And the reason I ask that is I just want to be sure that you are not following the status quo, that, I'm fine. I'm fine. The moment we understand that we can be vulnerable to someone, even within our closed spaces, we are still good to go. And so while community might still work in certain spaces, and I know in this country that these communities are there, we also need to find our spaces where we can create communities of ourselves, with people that we can share these experiences with, and learn to be vulnerable. I think one of the biggest troubles with all of us as men is not even just saying that I will be vulnerable. It is, who will I be vulnerable to? And I think determining who that person or who those people are is where the trouble comes. And so what we do is we pull back. So while there might be cultural spaces, I think we are also learning to create spaces for ourselves where we can learn to share experiences and talk about our losses, our struggles, and our fears, and get help. Because I think for me, that's one of the most important things. Get help. Because without it, we are just going to simply deteriorate to our own depths. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Roscoe?
Oh man, thank you so much, Isaac. A lot, a lot. Culture. I'm going to go to Ugandan funerals. I'm not, but also I want to say to Isaac that even in Buganda, when we are greeting, it's elaborate. We ask about people at home. Are they still there? And you hear women say, ooh, well, and the greeting continues. So it's not only amongst the Basoga, nothing against them, but I'm just saying I think all cultures have their own way. But to get back to from culture, I think for me what I want to say here is that culture can also restrict in so many ways. If you think about Ugandan funerals, Ugandan funerals provide strong communal structures. People gather, they pray, they contribute, they help you, they are there with you. These practices can actually protect bereaved families from isolation. However, but also the same cultural environment is the one that restricts men, because the culture assigns man authority while they limit their, emotional participation. They say things like men are supposed to be strong. I remember at my mom's funeral, even my own brother was asking me not to cry. So you can imagine how culture can be restrictive. A man may be expected to make decisions, receive visitors, demonstrate control, while women are being given more visible permission to cry. In fact, it's okay for one to, to turn and look at women as they express themselves, as they respond, but everyone reacts with shock or surprise that a man is actually crying or expressing so much pain. So the question that I want to pose to everyone who's listening, in our families, at our funerals, who is permitted to fall apart and who is immediately given work to do? And I'm not trying to condemn culture, but to identify what should be preserved and what should change, because as Henry and Isaac have touched about these things, I think we need to go back to the basics of, I'm going to call Derek. I'm going to say, I'm going to have lunch with you tomorrow. I'm going to ask you, are you really coping? How was today? How are you handling this? I think people immediately want to support women, which is not a bad thing. We're not here to sideline or take anything away from women. We're just saying that for the most part, men are forgotten. And this is reinforced by culture. No one wants to find out if you're able to go back to work. Everyone just automatically expects you to go back to work. Because in my experience, and this was one of the most heartbreaking things, I remember for all the losses in my life, the person that I would go to was my mom. When I lost relatives, I would go to my mom. And at a certain point, I was at her funeral. And it dawned on me that wherever you hide, you only have yourself. And you think about how people don't even want you to express this. Like, where do you
Is it my mic?
No, I think we have lost Roscoe.
He's lost.
Must be his connection.
You'll get back, I imagine.
So I'm saying that the calls stop, the faces disappear. At work, everyone looks at you like you're very vulnerable. They don't know what to say. Yet, I always tell people that there are always three deaths or three losses or three funerals, whichever way you want to look at it. When the news breaks, when you bury the person, and then when you are alone after the burial and everything. That's when it's more pronounced. That's when it's so isolating. And you almost want to ask, where's everyone? Because I think some people shut you out even during conversations. It's important for us to go back to the basics where relatives and friends actually stayed longer than a month while you learned to live again, while you made sense of the loss. I would not blame this on culture because culture evolves. But Are you doing enough to check on your male friend who just recently lost a loved one? Are you physically trying to connect with them? Are you making sure you check on their finances? Because funerals cost a lot nowadays. Are you able to look for the kids where they are if your loved one, disappeared?
Yeah, I've lost Ross again. Okay, I think I'll bring him back on to give those reflections later on, but I would like to really thank him for trusting us with. Yes, Ross, we lost you, but I think you will give those reflections a little bit later on as we move on. Your connection is not well, but thank you for trusting us with something so personal, and whatever you've shared reminds us that even behind many of these issues we're discussing today are the real people who are carrying the very experiences that we are talking about and that people can really relate to, and we are grateful you've allowed us to hear your story. So I would like to move on to Henry. Ross talked about the importance of a supportive spaces, or maybe seeking those spaces that are really supportive. Like, from your perspective, what does supportive presence actually look like for anyone who may be supporting, like someone who is grieving, or maybe someone who has gone through loss?
Supportive presence would mean that you are not faking your support. You are not there because of anything, that you are fully present in somebody's life. I think, and we can always tell whether somebody is either looking out for something. We've had people say, just imagine a widow who is out there, and there is this guy who is looking for bring everything, but the interest is actually to take over this widow. Now, that is also could be supportive in a way that somebody is looking for that, but it's kind of self-centeredness on the side of one person. It's like, actually, I'm not so much interested in supporting you, but I'm more interested in getting into your space. So I think bottom line, like we have said earlier, it's really to get back to our humanness. We used to, and people have also talked about, I think it was Isaac who talked about the capitalistic tendency that has inhibited our minds and our way of life. I think we need to go back to the basics. What counts? Is it the money we have? Is it the relationships? Oh, it's the people. I have seen on many vehicles put comments like Vakubantu, leave people. And many times I'm asking myself, Vakubantu, Dekuchi, yes, people could be very difficult, but we need people in our lives, So what is important is to be genuinely present in other people's lives. And what I was saying, I had said this earlier, where I said that it may not be actually that you even have resources. And by the way, what capitalism has also done is that it has enslaved us to think that for you to show up, you need to have financial backup to support your show up. And probably it has gotten deeper into every other person's psyche, that if you show up without finances, then you're not showing up good enough. But we should show up, even those without financial capacity. They should show up, because I think what people always need from us, most importantly, is that we are available and that we are present in their lives. I think that's what is most important. We need to inculcate in ourselves the showing up. Show up. Let's show up. I mean, let's go back and show up. whether we have or not. But when we have, actually, we also need to share and show up with something, so that, like Dr. Kasuja was saying, show up, and if you have a bag and people, they are not yet having food, give them the food. Take something to people who have been just that, like it used to happen. And that's what is important. But also talk to people. Take a moment and listen to them, because of I don't want to say because of our culture. It's part of what human whatever. People don't want always to show the bad side of theirs, or what would seemingly look like this is shameful. Whether it's not shameful, but they would call it shameful. We need to support them and like and make it easy for them to open up. Like we say, for you to merit somebody talking to you, is you should show presence. You should be willing to be there. You can't say, please tell me, and you've just gotten to somebody and you just tell the person, please tell me what is exactly going on. Tell me what is how you're not going to. You must first of all show up and show that you are somebody someone can relate to, somebody, and you don't need to be a therapist. You just need to be a human being who is available for someone to open up, for somebody to express themselves, to express their fears, to express how they feel, what's probably even going on in their life. It could be that they're having sleepless nights, and when they tell you that, you may not have the skills to help them sleep, but at least when they tell you exactly that, you might actually cause their sleep because they have been able to express themselves to you. Yeah, thank you very much. So that's how we are going to be present. Basically, show up in a way. Just let's show up and show up in any way.
Thank you so much, Henry.
We don't even have to talk. Showing up might mean just we're going to be available and sit on a piece of stone, and we let them talk. Or we are going to sit in their sitting rooms and they are talking, or they're not even talking, but they are quiet, but we are there. That's also important. Sometimes we may not have what to say, but that's what is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry. So I'd like to bring in Isaac, and your perspective on it's quite a similar question. It's quite similar to what Henry has been talking about, but I'd like to bring in the cultural aspect, where how can we basically create spaces where men can grieve without maybe people saying maybe this person this and this is happening. Mainly, how can we create cultural spaces where men can grieve without losing their sense of dignity, identity, or maybe belonging, with putting into perspective of our African culture?
Eric, I'm careful about the word culture here, and the way it's been brought into my academic world is quite problematic. So I am careful when I talk about culture, and I'm also very careful when I talk about African culture. But I do understand that it is the thing that we have to deal with. And so how can we create spaces where men can grieve without people saying this and that and whatever they want to say? See, we've talked about the whole idea of vulnerability, but we've also talked about the fact that spaces are only created when we can trust people. So if I don't trust you, Derek, there is no way in which I am going to ever talk to you about the crap going on in my life. Why? Because I do not trust you enough, one, to keep it to yourself, but two, I do not trust you enough to be the kind of person that I will tell this without walking out of that room, talking to you and thinking to myself, what did I just do when I talked to Derek about this? So spaces are created when we create relationships. What kind of relationships are we creating for each other? And when we talk of relationships here, I'm talking about deep or deeply embedded relationships where we know within ourselves that I can go get myself naked with before this person, tell them everything that's happening into my life, rather in my life, and there is not going to be any wisp of being judgmental on their end or questioning me about this and this and the other. And like Henry said, sometimes it's really about whether I can call this person and they will listen. So over the years, one of the things I've had to do is to also be open enough with myself and the kind of networks I have created around myself. Communities are built when we learn to realize that we need each other, that we need each other on this life journey. We need each other even when things seem to fall apart. Henry said something that reminded me of something in a book. I think it's Things Fall Apart, where this guy comes to visit a friend, and the friend asks, "How are the people at home?" And this guy says, "Ah, they are quiet." And so this little boy wonders how there can be a grown man and his family all surrounding him, both his wives and children, and they're surrounding him and they're quiet. But what people don't understand about that is that that's a community that has also gotten to understand itself in quite interesting psychological ways. So if we are going to create spaces that give us the chance to grieve, we're going to begin with working on our personal relationships. How do we build relationships and networks that are going to be helpful for us? These relationships and networks, how willing are we to go to the point of saying we will go raw when it comes to what we are going through? And I'm not saying that it's just going to be about the grieving moment, but it's about those networks that you create where if I am excited about something, a friend the other day just sent me a text and said, "Hey, Isaac, um, there is some good news that I would like to share with you." And that person and I have built a kind of something between us that I know if something is going on in my life or his life, the first thing would be, "Hey, can we talk? Do you have time for us to talk?" It doesn't have to be long, but it's about the network and the kind of relationship that we built. Every person that we bring on board our lives is part of a community of people that we are building for ourselves. And like I think I've said this before, every man needs a group of, say, 3 to 5 men that he can run to, that he can go to when things are really, really good, and when things are really somewhere in the middle, and when things are really bad. That kind of community for a man that helps him to sharpen himself and other men gives him a chance to realize that he is not alone. And I think the beauty about that kind of community that we can build even for ourselves, knowing the kind of people that are important to us, gives us the chance to know that we will not be judged, we will not be laughed at, we will be seen as human just like as they are human, but above it all, we will be seen to be helping each other, we will be seen to be supporting each other. And the beauty about that is that then we know that regardless of what stuff we share with this community that we've built for ourselves, we can still come out stronger because we know that I went to so and so and they were able to talk to me, or I shared this with my group of guys and we were able to talk about this. And yes, they may not have given me all the answers, but at least there is something that has been shared with someone else. If you can't share it with family, you at least have that network that you can talk to. The important thing, though, is that you must be willing to do two things. You must be willing to trust these people, and you must be able to respect them, because it's going to be hard for us to share things with people we don't trust and respect. And if we realize that even within that network there is someone that seems not to be loyal to us, folks, it is okay to let go of people. People are not supposed to be in our lives forever if they are not interested in being in our lives. And so I tell people that sometimes people come into our lives for a time, some people come to stay, some people come to mess us up, some people come to make us happy, some people come for a point where we are really going through a bad time, and then once we are done with that bad time, they move on. We must be willing to let go of that, but we must also be willing to have a core community of people, older than we are, our peers, younger than we are, that we can talk to. And when we talk to and share with our life's experiences, we can be sure that we can get the help that we need.
Thank you so much, Isaac. And your reflection and your perspective quite speaks to something many people can quietly relate to. So moving forward, I would like to ask Roscoe to quite paint a picture. At what point should a man or people around him, or it could be even a woman, become concerned that professional mental health support may be necessary? Like if you're in a state where you're grieving.
Um, First of all, I do not want people to look at professional help as being at the extreme. I'm just going to go back to your question and how it has been framed. Like, what the advert says when symptoms become severe, seek medical advice, or when symptom persists, whatever that is. I want us to normalize help. And I want to go to the river where Isaac just drew water. We always undermine speaking to colleagues. I want you to look at speaking to a colleague as professional help, even though they may not be wearing, a professional hat, like a therapist and all that. I just want us to normalize talking to other people. And I'm going to get back to what you said. When should someone seek professional help? That's when grief becomes very, very persistent, that the person can no longer do or perform these functions that society would, probably render very, very key. But for me, what I want to say is that I don't want people to look at grief as a psychological disorder. It is a normal reaction. It is a reaction to loss of love, loss of connection, and all that. And whatever men feel, whatever human beings feel when they lose a loved one is real. And it's normal to feel the way that you feel. And do whatever you can to act alive. I talk about act alive in the work that I'm doing. It doesn't mean pretending, but you have to commit to a certain lifestyle. It's impossible for you to go back to where you were before. I mean, our lives are changed forever with each loss. But we know that every human being has to wake up. And when you wake up, you don't stay in bed, especially for us who have become adults now. You have to be able to do the basic things. And your sole responsibility is look after yourself before you even look after the others. And for me, if you can't look after yourself anymore, seek help. That help could be from your spouse, from your children, from your friends. And if there's no one available, or if there's no one that you can trust, seek help from a professional person. Isaac talked about trust. You need to be able to trust yourself to make the right decisions as far as your well-being is concerned. I've seen people come in for therapy and they say it's not helping them. And I can understand, because for some people, it's not necessarily a therapist or a counselor that they're looking for. They're looking for a connection, for someone to relate to that. So before you give up on yourself, ask yourself, at this point, what is it that I'm looking for and what is it that I'm avoiding? Sometimes it's facing your very own ghosts, as they say it. Grief is very complicated, that sometimes we don't even know what we want when we're grieving. But listen to your body, listen to your mind, trust the process. If you've spoken to someone, is it helping? Be patient with yourself. We never really recover from grief. Make room for grief. Make room, learn to act alive. Some people say that with time it gets better. It never does. But once you comfortably make room for these losses, you learn to get up, breathe, go through the motions, and just be grateful for being alive. So to any man who's out there, to any woman who's out there, to someone who has struggled with so many losses, losses that they can't even comprehend, losses that they can't even use words to describe, losses that they don't even want to think about, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need a little help. And that help could be from your children, from your friend, from your neighbor, just to learn to wake up, just to learn to do basic things, just to learn to walk. No one is setting expectations for you to perform at the highest level, to do these, with time, you will learn to do those things. But for now, train yourself to act alive. And what does that look like? Getting out of bed, cleaning after yourself, taking food like it's medication, surviving every day with its sorrows. Allow the memories to come and go. These are things that every human being out there can do. And if you can afford professional help, well and good. Is it helping? If it's not helping, act alive. Just go through with each and every day. Grief walks with you, but you learn. Every human being can learn to live. The solution is not to give up on yourself. It's not to withdraw. It's not to kill yourself, but just to allow yourself to breathe from one moment to another. It's hard. Not even connections with other people can make it any easier. No one can ever touch the pain and you feel like they're carrying it. It's only you that can carry it, but there are things that you can do and only you will know what is helping. And once you figure that out, you learn to breathe, go through the days. And with some days, it's going to be good, it's going to be better. And if you find that person who helps you relax and cry even more, that's even finer. But act alive. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on everything. Act like a human being who still has life, who still draws breath. Thank you so much, Derek.
Thank you, Ross. And thank you. I think the platform we have, it gives us a powerful place to pause because we have moved through a number of important questions today, and from what men lose to what they carry to how they grieve and how grief shows up, and ultimately how healing and support can happen. But this conversation is not complete without hearing from our audience. And I would like us to now turn to the audience, and I'll start. You can send questions to the chat, maybe, and then maybe you can raise your hand and we can take your hand. But before we move to the Q&A from the audience, I would like our panelists to take 1 minute to respond to this final takeaway. And it's the same question as we had last time, like, what is that one thing society needs to stop doing, one thing we need to start doing, and one responsibility men themselves should embrace when it comes to grief? You have 1 minute to respond to that, and then I'll start taking questions from the audience. Thank you. I think I'll go Henry, Roscoe, and then Isaac.
What's that one thing that
Society
what?
needs to stop doing.
Mm.
The one thing we need to start doing, and one responsibility men themselves should embrace when it comes to grief.
Yeah, one thing that society should stop doing is to judge people when they are going through grief. And what should the society again do is to support people who are going through grief. See anyone who is grieving as somebody whom you need to go out and support. And the third one was
The responsibility men themselves should embrace.
and your responsibility as a human being is to take responsibility, is to take charge. Dr. Roscoe has already talked about it. Take charge. I know you could be down, but take charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Roscoe?
I mean, for me, society should not assume that a man is doing okay just because someone seemingly looks fine, and they go to work and they laugh. Grief is real. For anyone who has experienced loss, I can't even begin to describe it. This is the point when any human being needs comfort. Human beings are social beings. Instead of withdrawing, instead of saying, they're doing fine, look at them, they're going to work, be curious when others are experiencing loss. Support them in whichever way that you can. And as other speakers have said, show your presence. Don't disappear. Whoever loses a loved one, trust me, the last thing they want is to lose their friends, to lose their relatives, or for people to disappear from them. That's a double tragedy. So don't assume that just because Tom or Vincent or Henry is continuing to go to work, or they show up and then they laugh, the nights when everyone goes away, it's harder, it's tougher. One thing that you need to start doing, be very deliberate. When a colleague loses a loved one, show up. Even a phone call. Take 2 minutes checking on them, even a message. I'm thinking about you this morning. It must be tough. I'll pray for you. Send whatever you can. Just remind them that when they're going through a difficult time, you're still with them. You may not be able to physically walk with them, but be that person that doesn't disappear, that calls often, that checks in on them often. We have a responsibility as men to seek help. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, especially to the people that are in your life. If Derek is showing up every day and they ask you, how are you? Be very genuine and transparent, especially if Derek has demonstrated trust. If you do not tell Derek what's happening in your life, there's no way for him to predict. He can't know what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and therefore he's not going to be able to support you. The reason as to why me and Isaac and Henry have this amazing relationship is we actually make time for one another to just speak and listen to the other person. If we hadn't created that space and protected it, and to know that, these are important people, you can pick up the phone and call them anytime, we would have been just like any other person. So men have the responsibility to also allow room, because sometimes it feels like you're forcing someone to speak to you. How many of us are going to hang around when each time you check in on someone, they just say, I'm fine? They're almost asking you to leave, disappear, leave me alone. So, and to men, it becomes weird, You can't be calling Derek, how are you doing? What's going on? And he says nothing. He responds with fine. So allow yourselves to be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. It doesn't matter what they're saying. In the end, sometimes it takes vulnerability to get the help that you need, to get the soothing that might help you and carry you through that grief that you're experiencing that is, disabling you. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Ross. Isaac?
What should society stop doing? I think society needs to stop doing two things, and one of them has been said: imagining that things are fine, making the assumptions about people without really finding out exactly what is going on. But I think for me, which is even more important, is society needs to stop pretending that they know what people are going through. And I say that because we all process grief and loss in different ways. And I always tell people, just because my parents have not been here for 30 years does not mean that I understand what pain someone is going through if they lost their parent yesterday. My job as a person is to sit and listen, to stretch out my hand to say, hey, I'm here if you would really want to talk to me. And if you need some help, let me know how I can help. Or sometimes I've just gone to someone and said, how can I help? And give, and it's important for us to give that safe space. I use this because sometime long ago or back, I don't remember when, someone walked into my office and sat down quietly, a student. And then before I knew it, he just broke down. And I said totally nothing to him. and he broke down. After some time, I asked, okay, can we now talk? And he said, yes, we can talk. And this is a guy who had lost his father just a few weeks earlier, and he was really acting very strong. And I knew there would be a point where if he didn't deal with these issues, he was going to get himself in trouble. So instead of pretending that we know what people are going through, can we listen to them and let them tell us what they're going through? And this is probably what Ross was also saying, that we need to be honest about what we are going through to someone, or else we wear them and they are not interested in really being there to support us. So that is important. What we need to start doing, we need to create the spaces. We need to stretch a hand to someone. We need to be there for people and be real about being there for people, not simply because we want to put up a show, but we genuinely care about people. And I must say that genuine care for each other is one thing that is lacking in our world. And if we can create networks where we genuinely care for people, people will really understand that we care about them, and they will be able to open up. Now, my responsibility, William Shakespeare has a very famous statement I love, to thine own self be true. It is important for us to be true to ourselves, to know what we are going through, to understand our feelings, to be able to express those feelings, to tell someone, hey, I miss my parents. Hey, I miss my mom. I miss my brother. I miss this and this and the other. Because you see, over the years, I've had to get to these points where I have memories that have been built, and I remember some of these things. And I think I've talked to some people and just said, you know what, it's so funny, but just recently there was this thought about mom or dad that came up, and out of the blue, I felt something was wrong. Just like I miss this person, and like Ross said, time does not always heal. It may make it easier to handle, but there's always that thing that makes this wound sore and raw when we experience certain losses that we have gone through in the lives of others. And so it is important for us to face ourselves, to be true to who we are. And because until we are true to ourselves and true to what we are going through, it's going to be very hard for us to express the stuff that we're going through. Thank you.
And thank you so much for those important points and perspectives and insights. And we are really very thankful for the level and the detail and the experience, the knowledge you always bring to this series. And it's really, really, really very great, very important. And thank you so much. I would like to move to the Q&A. I'll start with the questions in the chat. But if anyone would like to ask a question, they can please raise their hand, or maybe I'll invite you to unmute and you can ask your question. So the very first question we have from the chat is from Caesar Abura, and he asks, the question is mainly about business loss and failure. So he say, I'll just read what he typed, and then maybe the question will be able to come out from that, because it wasn't straightforward. So he's like, with business loss stroke failure, the man in question can instead get castigated, especially if he has been misunderstood. This can be a very stressful, knowing that someone has lost a source of livelihood, and then the people closest to him are instead blaming him, or more so wrongly. Supposing I'm running a business in an urban setting and I lose a substantial amount of money, my relatives and friends in the countryside may think I'm simply lying. It's always very tough to overcome both challenges when desired support and understanding, especially from family and friends, is denied and unjustified blame is apportioned instead. It becomes very painful for the young one. So basically, I think Abdul wants to know, what are some of the practical steps can a young entrepreneur take to protect his mental health when dealing with both trauma of losing not only his source of livelihood, but also the unfair blame from family, who misinterpret his financial loss and accuse him of dishonesty.
I would like to
So I
respond
think,
to that.
all right. Then let me just get all the questions. Ross will respond to Caesar. Then there is another question from Edward Katerega, who says, good afternoon, my name is Eddie. Having lost both of my parents, that's a pity. I've seen firsthand how grief affects men and boys. Question one, in your view, can grief ever lead to positive outcomes for men and boys, such as greater resilience, purpose, or emotional maturity? Or is its impact primarily negative? And then the second question is it possible to equip men and boys in advance with mental and emotional tools to handle grief? My experience suggests that no amount of preparation fully readies you for the ongoing emotional waves of loss. What early training and support systems would you recommend to better prepare them? I don't know, but Henry and Isaac, could anyone be able to take this up?
Talk about the positivity that could come out of grief. What good could come out of grief? The experience one goes through.
Derek, I actually think I responded to that in the chat, if I recall very well.
Okay. If you responded to it in the chat, it's fine. Let me move on to this question from Alan Nisima, who asks, how can men cope with the intense psychological strain of joblessness or financial loss when society treats male financial instability as unacceptable compared to women? Isaac, can you please?
Well, it's a beautiful one. I like that.
May I say this? I'm going to use language that might not be nice, but I'm going to say this. Folks on the call, shit happens to us all. It's normal. It happens. We lose jobs. I was out of one for 3 years. I survived. I got out. Again, who are we talking to? Family sometimes judges us harshly because family has its own worldview and vision of who we should be. And I'm very careful with family because family has a way it can push us and then leave us to fall on our own. Because you see, they say when you have a lot of stuff, people are willing to be your friends, and when everything falls apart, they let you fall alone. So it is important again to know that while you have family and you have all these people surrounding you, you have people that you can still probably have to go to when these things happen. I am very interested in the cushions we create and put around ourselves when things go bad. And so when there is job loss or when there is loss of money, it is always important to ask yourself this one question: who remained? And that person who remained is most likely the person really interested in you. Make sure you do everything to keep that person even closer to yourself and go as vulnerable as you can go with that person. Because if they've gone through this whole mess with you, then you can be sure they will be able to help you navigate life even in its worst moments. And I'm not saying that everyone does that all the time, but you will always notice that there is one or two persons that stick even when things really go bad. And unfortunately, most times it's not family. If you have a spouse that understands, and this is something I tell very many people, that my wife stood with me during that time. That's someone that you need to keep close to yourself. If your children have been with you through that time, keep them close to yourself. If you have had friends that have gone with you through that time, keep them to yourself. But do not try to put up a show to think that things are good when you actually know that you're sinking. It is important that you don't put up a show to people who don't really care about you. And I know that sounds selfish sometimes, But the world can make you crazy because they start looking at you as less human, even when they do not know what you're struggling with. And I always tell people, if you don't understand what I'm struggling with, it is okay. I am not going to explain myself to you. Those that understand it, those that know what I'm going through, will always be there and they'll be willing to understand. And it may be selfish, but you can be sure about this. It is the one thing that is going to help you navigate life in some of its toughest moments. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Isaac. It makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Derek, I wanted to add to what Isaac was saying.
Okay.
One of my special interests actually is related to that question, and I know just recently a report has just come out from ILO that shows that there are so many young people. The numbers actually have increased of the need, not in education and not in employment, and it has quite a lot of psychological ramifications that come as a result of young people not having jobs. All of us, because jobs give us lots of other goodies. Not only just have meaning, you have meaning as you go to work. Of course, the first bit is to take care of ourselves. No one of us wants to be dependent on other people. So it's quite a pain to be dependent on other people. But as Isaac has indicated to start with, it doesn't mean that when you don't have a job that you're not going to get one, or that things are going to be completely shut out for you. So I want to allay your fears that yes, it's very painful, and that's why actually we're here to talk about it. Whatever we need to, the support that we need to pick from other people, and I want to contribute 5 areas which you might find useful. Research is showing that one of the things that will keep us more resilient, even in such precarious conditions, one of them has to be with and this is, I think, what also beats us down, or especially when we're in a very desperate state, the way you are. Many young people find themselves. One of them would be that they actually lose the hope, because when we go to school, we are very optimistic. We want to get a job, and we are sure after a degree something probably is going to come up. Now we wait for 1 year, wait for 2 years, wait for 3 years, wait for 4 years. Nothing is coming up. So I want you to be every other time to think about one thing, being realistic and optimistic. Look at yourself and say, what is feasible within my state? What can I do? Because what also makes us get into more pain is the fact that we think something is going to show up this year, nothing shows up. Something is going to show up next year, nothing shows up. And we completely get so much depressed. So it's very important to know that. But also continue to have faith in yourself. What also gets shut out is the faith that people have in themselves. Have faith that something is going. It could have faith in God, but also faith in yourself. It's very important that we keep the faith and know that something is going to show up. But also, the other important thing is keep asking, keep seeking for support. A friend called me this morning and said, Henry, I don't have a job. USID closed. I used to work in USID. It closed. I have not had a job for 2 years. That's why even I'm talking about him. So how much do we show up to people close to us to seek for support? It could be support to start up something, but it could also be support every other day. Keep knocking. Don't lose hope. So what happens is people lose the hope and they say, I'm done. I'm to hell. Don't lose the hope. But very importantly, also be radically creative. Just think about it. Find a way of trying to, within your mean. Every one of us in some way, we have somewhere where we have a branch of some sort we can get onto, and then try to see how do I become creative in this space? How do I get something to hang on and keep going? So I want to ask you that keep doing that, because it's going to be helping you in a way as you are struggling. Sometimes you are going to go even without food, but don't lose heart. Keep the hope alive and keep the smile. Keep laughing about it. I tell people one time when I didn't have a job, one of the things I used to do is I would go to I see some of my colleagues with whom we started on this call. And what I would do is I would support the guys who are older in my class, my master's class. And somehow, one would still call it radical creativity of some sort. The balance that would be left on their money when I was doing my master's, they would give it to me, and then I would have a meal of each commando, and that would keep me going. So we need to be very creative. So don't lose heart. Something is going to show up, but you must be the one to get in that seat and then see yourself get to somewhere. Of course, it's tough, but it will get better with time. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Roscoe, you respond to Caesar's question.
I'll do that in a minute, in 1 minute. Caesar, you talked about something that is very important that so many young men and some young women face. You get a job, you start supporting the family, and all of a sudden it becomes your responsibility. Many people experience that and they learn the hardest way. What I would like to say to you is remind yourself that your responsibility is to survive in this life. First, make sure that you can support yourself. There's so many families that forget that young people have so much pressure. Their intentions are very good. You're doing an amazing job, and when you make sacrifices and support the family, that is very selfish and a very sacrificial gesture. You have done well. When you lose, for example, you said you lost your business and they became very harsh, they accused you of not caring and all that. Like my colleague Isaac said, my friend put it very well. Learn those people. Take your lessons. That is how they value you. That's how they see you as someone who's just there to provide. Because at the time when they're supposed to support you, remember all the support was going to them. Now you're losing your business and they're turning against you. It's already very painful to lose a business and then they're isolating you because they're being hostile. So one of the things that I want to say to you is learn, pick yourself up, take the lessons, understand who they really were, who they really are, and do better. I hope that you're able to build again. I hope that you're able to pick up yourself. But I think there's going to be even tougher things in life. Some people pick up lessons later on in their lives when everything is lost. But as tough as it is, be kind to yourself. It's not the end of the world. You're better off learning this early and keep only people who value you and your contributions, irrespective of whether you have wealth or not. In life, it's really about bouncing back. You either adapt or die. I hope that you're able to pick yourself up. I know it's painful, but there's nothing else to do other than rebuild. Give yourself an opportunity to build again. And to everyone who's on the call, I know that many of us probably are connecting here because we lost a loved one. It is very painful. The pain, no one else can connect to it. Even three siblings who have lost the same person don't grieve the same way. Just be kind to yourself. Just remind yourself that one day you're going to feel better. Just remind yourself that there are other things in life that you can do. And most importantly, remind yourself that your loved ones probably want you to remain alive, want you to keep going, want you to thrive, and give yourself that amazing gift to thrive in this life, irrespective of the losses. If you're asking me if it's possible, the answer is yes. But it takes you to give yourself permission to get up and keep walking. Thank you so much, Derek.
Thank you so much, Ross. Thank you so much, Henry and Isaac. Do you have any questions from the audience? If yes, please, you can unmute and ask as we wind up. Okay, seems there is no question. And so as we come to an end of today's conversation, I feel like one important message that has stood out is grief is not always visible, and it takes so many forms. And from this conversation, I've been reminded that grief is not only limited to losing someone through death. We can grieve a relationship. It could be opportunities, jobs, dreams, and even maybe the future that we imagine for ourselves. So perhaps I feel like, and for the audience, the question we leave today, personally, I could say I leave with today is, what loss might someone around us be carrying that we have not recognized? Like, when you look around, what do you see? Like, there are some things you may be able to look at and you see like maybe this person has been going through something. So for men, strength doesn't have to mean carrying everything alone. For all of us, it could be you, it could be anyone who is close to you. Perhaps what we can do is we can create spaces where people feel safe to acknowledge what they are carrying. And that's one of the most important things and takeaways I've taken away today from today's discussion. So once again, thank you to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Roscoe, Dr. Isaac, and Mr. Henry. Thank you for everyone who has joined and contributed to the conversation today. May we learn not only to recognize grief when it's visible, but also to respond with compassion when it's hidden. And thank you so much. And I think may you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you,
you next
thank
time.
you.